Welcome back to the Innovative Agency, everybody. Sharon Toerek again with you today. And as we're sitting here about to have what I know is going to be a terrific conversation for you all, it is the unofficial beginning of summer. By the time this reaches all of you, will probably officially be summer. And I think that's meaningful because the conversation we're going to have today is something I think we all think about seasonally, which is taking a breath and stepping away from our businesses. And that's a scary thing for a lot of us. And I'm going to throw myself in that camp, calling myself out as the ultimate control freak. But you're going to hear from an agency owner who took that leap of faith and stepped away from her agency to tremendous and positive results, and who learned things that we all need to either learn or be reminded of, um, and who had fabulous business results as a result of it. And so, Louise Oliver, founder and CEO of Peritus Public Relations, thank you for being here with us today, first of all.
Of course, Sharon, as one of your clients and a big cheerleader of your agency, it means so much to talk to someone that I see as a thought leader in our space and um, who serves their mission to support other agency owners like myself. So
Yeah.
appreciate you having me on today.
Well, I appreciate that, and we love working with you and your team, of course. And one thing I'm here as a student today as much as I am an interviewer, because I have to tell you, Louise, this is a tricky lesson for entrepreneurs in general
Hmm.
to learn. And in my experience, and it is also a tricky time in the agency world for an agency owner to be convinced that taking a step away will be good for them or their business, because there's a lot of turbulence out there. Agency owners are trying to navigate what economic turbulence means for them and their clients. They're trying to figure out how to integrate AI in as non-disruptive a way as possible. It's probably one of the most turbulent times I've ever seen in the agency world, representing agencies for as long as I have. And it's not that we haven't had other tech interruptions or advancements, but it just seems like a lot of things happening simultaneously that are causing a lot of change, a lot of worry amongst agency owners. And so, but let's take a step back in time for a little bit. You have a very young family, and that sort of plays into the story around
Yeah.
why you made this decision in the first place. And so let's start there. You have owned and run Peritus for how long now?
For a decade.
Okay.
Started it in my mid to late 20s when I likely had no business starting a firm, but the previous firm I was with was shutting doors. I had 30 days to find a new job.
Mhm.
And I was devastated because I loved what we were building, kind of an advocacy focused comms firm based out of Alabama. Called my dad, my greatest mentor,
Yeah.
and said, Dad, like, this is the end of a road. And he said, Well, why don't you start your own firm then? If there's no other firm like it out there. Um, and that seemed crazy at the time.
Mhm.
I didn't know the first thing about the legal side of things or QuickBooks or what that could even look like. But he reminded me he was his age when he started
Mhm.
a professional service firm, an accounting firm that has grown to be a very well respected um, South Alabama firm. And that really kind of shift the mindset for me and really began the journey of starting Paradis, but starting it as a young age. Sharon, I wanted to make sure that I didn't look up at the end of this road and feel like I missed it all. I missed the opportunity to enjoy building a life with my husband or raising kids. And I think all agency owners really, for many of us, this is our baby. It's one of our babies.
Mhm.
Um, Growing a firm and giving your teammate your teammates a place to grow that you feel like is bigger than just a paycheck and growing something together. And so I think for a lot of us, when it comes to taking intentional time off, we say, well, that's part of the ownership tax we pay, right? The price of doing business is taking time off,
Mhm.
but we're either going to pay for it going before leaving, after we return, or inevitably we're going to work during that time off because
Mhm.
that's how we show up for our teams, right? They're taking a chance on us, so we're going to help them keep the lights on. We're going to come in and hero it, right? Like, I'm here if something blows up. Um, or you said it best earlier, Sharon. Yes, these are really uncertain times as a business owner, but I guarantee anyone listening to this has given a dozen reasons year after year why, this really isn't the year to do that trip I've really wanted to take, or to step back and help that family member going through health issues, or get to enjoy paternal leave, or a side hustle, or just taking that time to breathe for a minute and really think about, away from email in the day-to-day grind, how that they're going to take their business into the next chapter and redefine, the best years of their life ahead. So I don't know if you can relate to that, Sharon, but I feel like there's never a good time to take
Right.
time off, especially now.
I can definitely relate to that, and I think every agency owner, listening to this can relate to that, and so it begs the question for me to ask you, which is what convinced you, first of all, that this was gonna be your path? Well, first of all, so, you what caused you to finally jump into actually stepping away? Because you didn't just take a vacation, and you
No.
took a very, very defined break away from the business, and, um, how did you build your muscle up to be able to be confident enough to do that? Because I do think some of it's a mindset thing. And let's start there because I have so many
Yeah.
questions about
Yeah.
sort of the tactics that you put
Yes.
in
The
place
how.
to make sure
Yes.
that it could happen and you'd have a business to walk back to. But what what was the catalyst for you to step away in the first place?
Yes. I'm so glad you asked that. Um, I was pregnant with my third child. So I have three kids, 5 and under.
Mhm.
And I assumed that this maternity leave would be just like my others, where I would bust it leading up to it, do everything I can to set the team up for success. And like most owners do when they take, extended time off, kind of big brother, keep things rolling, check slack, keep things going. And parallel during this pregnancy, we are a team of 15. Sharon, we had 5 back-to-back parental leaves,
Oh
which we
boy.
give we give generous time off. Um, so the team was exhausted already, right? I knew going into my leave that they're tired. It was impacting morale probably even a little bit, although the firm was growing and we had really good momentum. And I'd spent that year really investing in specialized agency support that could help us think about things differently. That's, Sharon, when we brought you on to take a better look at our legal side.
Mm,
We worked with Agency Management Institute consultant Drew McClellan. And we had an HR partner that focused more on agencies. And
mm,
I found that these partners started to get me thinking about things differently. And so when I was on a call with Drew one day, he reminded me that there seemed to be a lot of um, anxiousness I was feeling about not missing the ride of my kids growing up. I think,
mhm,
when you go through a thing like a pregnancy, it provides some introspection. And also, my dad had recently retired after building this incredible firm that outlived him, that, he had an incredible succession plan set up. But watching him, go through that transition of retirement,
Mm-hmm.
and it really forced me, Sharon, to ask myself, will I be ready to let it go, whether that's 5 years from now or 30 years from now?
Mm-hmm.
Do I, am I completely defined by the value I bring in building this business? So to kind of wrap back around and answer your question, Drew said, Louise, I can't think of a better time for you to test yourself, that you can trust yourself and your team to allow minority partners to buy in one day, or to sell the business, or to
Mm-hmm.
be open to not fully letting your entire life be defined by building this. And he said, what if you completely walked away from this firm for 3 months to allow your leadership team to develop systems and processes without you, to see if they within them feel like they have what it takes to have more of a leadership and ownership stake here, and to give yourself time to really think if your control issues could do the things that you hope you can do one day to let this firm outlive its founder.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, what do you mean walk away? He said, I mean completely cut off access.
Mm-hmm.
And Sharon, do you know what I did? I
No.
burst into tears.
Oh no.
Burst into tears, because, and I really think the listeners can empathize with that. I'm not an overly emotional person, but that felt so disruptive and unnerving to me.
Mm-hmm.
What do you mean walk away from this thing that I have built, and abandon my team like
Mm-hmm.
that? It felt selfish, it felt scary, and something following that conversation started to get me thinking differently about what is the worst thing that would happen if I took some real time off.
Mm-hmm.
And when you start playing through those scenarios, Sharon, you realize that, is that part of the ultimate plan? If that series of horrible things would have to happen for your firm to completely go to shambles. And then I was able to shift out of the, oh gosh, what could happen, to why not, and what possibilities may come out of this that teach myself and this firm what the next chapter can look like. And so that
Mm-hmm.
really started the process of like, let's start talking about what this could look like.
I think that there's so many threads I want to pull in at that. I do think that for many agency owners, it is very hard for them to think about purpose separate and apart from the business that they've built, especially if they're a founder. Because as Drew likes to say, as Drew McClellan likes to say, most agency owners of small to mid-sized agencies anyhow are unintentional entrepreneurs. They really never planned on starting a business or growing a business. And once they do it and they're having success at it and they're in the groove of doing it, it does feel like it is your purpose, or it very much mimics life purpose. It's not that you're only one faceted, but it feels like the biggest, strongest facet, right? Or pillar
Oh
of
yeah.
any of our lives. And so the idea of stepping away from that for two things. First of all, well, does that mean that I'm not really needed here? Right?
Ooh, yeah,
And
struck a
if
chord
so, what
there.
does that say about me and my value? Because I haven't really thought about my value outside of the business. And secondly, um, what if they do really need me here and they can't do it? And what disaster might I be walking back into? So it's kind of your you're afraid of both sides of the coin, right? Or you're nervous about both sides of the coin. You're the first part is more of an existential question. It's more like self-examination. The second is more feels more real because it's like what real fires or big checks am I gonna be dealing with or writing when I get back and it didn't work out the way I hoped it had. But um
But wouldn't
so
you
how
rather
long
know?
yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
how long of a consideration process did you give this? I mean, you were expecting, so you were kind of like hourglass on the table, right?
Yes. And, uh, for those that, have mixed feelings about, well, yeah, that's a parental leave, that's not a real leave. I think for any of us, my advice would be pick a date and give yourself, I think, half a year um, to really think through it yourself and then determine how to get buy-in with your leadership team and then layer in the impact down to the team, to the clients, to the other stakeholders. And we could talk about this a little later. And then ensure that they feel like they've got some trusted guardrails while you're out.
Mhm.
And those things don't happen overnight, of course, thinking through those. We had certainly an expedited situation, but I found, especially with people I've talked to that actually have done this, it's sort of like, that trip we all wanted to take in our 20s to Europe that we just kept putting off, wait until the next bonus or break and busy schedule. It always kind of seems to be pushed to the next year unless you pick like a very clear time frame. So yeah, I would say about half a year to really do it the right way if you haven't had experience with it.
Right. Do you think I'd love to get your point of view about this. Your specific why or what I should say for how you were going to be investing that time outside of the business was yours. It was specific to you, but do you think it's important for an agency owner contemplating this to have a roadmap or an idea of how they're going to be allocating that time when they're not investing it every day in the business? Because I'm just thinking of of myself and the temptation I would have to want to dip back in if I didn't have a firm commitment or plan about how I was going to invest that time outside of and away from the business. What do you think about that?
That's such a great question, and I wondered that as well. Here's my thought. All of us can't, I guess we could do this till the day we take our last breath. But
Mhm.
I think for most of us, right, there is that retirement date in game where we feel like maybe we don't have the strength or energy to continue at the pace that an agency life requires. So to me, Sharon, although I wasn't exactly sure how I was going to spend that time, it almost felt like a necessary activity of sitting alone with my thoughts and not just having that high we all get from checking something off the list or like going through our
Yep.
mental project management. It's like, of course, I live in an old home. There are a million things that can be done to this house all the time. Quality time with kids, right? There's a million ways I could spend that time. And I
Mhm.
think for people that do have an itch or a focus, like maybe I'll write the book or,
Mhm.
but I even wanted to use that uncomfort to sit in that inertia and say, I need to understand the reality of how much this consumes my thoughts
Mhm.
to really decide if I'm okay with that moving forward, or B, if I need to acknowledge that maybe to better prepare for retirement, even if it's decades down the road, maybe I do need to build protected time to figure out hobbies or to, invest more time in being comfortable in my own thoughts and with a lack of agenda. So I
Mhm.
know that sounds a little hippie up in the air, but it so many people, you see it every day, really struggle with giving up partial stake of ownership or stepping away completely. And I wanted to use this as an opportunity to be comfortable, not having a real focus sense of purpose during that time. Of course, outside of taking care of a newborn, um,
You're
to,
already gonna be
yeah,
uncomfortable. So,
exactly.
I think that, that what strikes me about this so much is that we, you know, humans, entrepreneurs in particular, are so discomfort avoidant. I mean, we have a little more risk tolerance than other people, probably. However, it's just human nature to avoid the uncomfortable thing, the uncomfortable questions. And a lot of those come up if you are stepping away from what you normally spend your time doing every day. And so
Yes.
I do
Yes.
think that, there's a certain element to this of being willing to live in the discomfort of figuring out what the rest of your life looks like outside your agency. And it is an
Yeah.
uncomfortable thing because you're either
Yeah.
gonna find out some things about yourself that you weren't expecting, or you're gonna affirm some things about yourself that, maybe aren't, um, maybe that you don't love, namely that you're too invested in your business, perhaps, or maybe you're not invested enough, and that means that, somebody else on your team needs to be
Yeah.
stepping up to balance you out, whatever it might be for you. But,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean,
Well,
this is one of the top reasons why people who aspire to retire or sell their agencies end up miserable after because they didn't think about the
yeah.
discomfort of not
Yeah.
being in that world anymore.
And imagine if you took intentional time off every year for the next 10 years.
Mhm.
You're going to be ready for that chapter. And we want our leaders to want our jobs. I don't want the people that I hope that buy into this agency one day to go, oh, I do not want her job. We want them to want our jobs, right? And so,
Yeah.
even if not for you, it's for them.
Mhm.
And when I took that time off, I was able here couple like just transformational things that happen. One is once I got through the guilt and really could sit with my thoughts, I really tapped into what I felt like were my God given strengths
Mhm.
and realized that I could no longer return to the agency and keep up the same habits that I was. I had to look at my day differently. I had to focus on really growing the firm and doing things only I could. And when I
Mhm.
came back, you're exactly right, Sharon. There were so many insecurities that popped up when the person that sort of was leading the operations for the firm while I was out, she was doing way better at me at certain things, and that feels a little inadequate. It's like, whoa,
Mhm.
I've been doing this for 10 years and,
Yep.
she's bringing more tech and systems and processes in. Um,
Mhm.
but it's a better use of her strengths. And I had inevitably had my hand in so many things just based on years of habits. Sure, maybe a little bit of control issues that we all have, but she's totally stepped up. And it gave different leaders in the firm an opportunity where I was inevitably the glue in a lot of situations. Like, let me huddle with this person on this business development effort. And then I'm going to go back to our director of client work. It got me out of being the nucleus of everything. And they got to see each other in a new light and lean on one another better. It got me out of a few of the like areas that I was responsible for that they're better equipped. Um, Things move faster And I remember the second day after being back, Sharon, this is a little bit of an embarrassing story, but I went to start our all team meeting,
Mhm.
Tuesday morning meetings, and I went to open my mouth, and there went our COO just leading the meeting. And I was a little offended at first, like, whoa, that's my job, you know? But the meeting for the first time didn't run over. She had found a way to give other people like these moments to like empower themselves and give um, takeaways for the team, brainstorm on different areas. It had given them confidence to step up while I was out. And I felt very uneasy on like, how am I going to spend my days now if I'm not doing these types of things and preparing for these types of meetings?
Mhm.
And I ended up, Sharon, writing 5 letters. I love to write handwritten notes to, I'd call them heroes, just people that I've wanted to work with for years. And I went and hand dropped off each of those letters with like a book I got on Amazon that reminded me of each of them. Those all turned into relationships. I think I secured 3 meetings the weeks leading after that, and
Wow.
it turned into business. So when people ask, how does that change your business? I mean, that was the moment where to me, God laughed at me and was like, this is how you should be spending your time,
Mhm.
not trying to run the team meeting that you're always going to run over as an Enneagram 7. Let your operator operate and function in that day to day. And so it's moments like that, I think, that people need to realize like, your firm is going to go to new heights because you're going to level yourself up when you get better in sync with your gifts and what only you can do to move your firm forward.
That's such a good takeaway because the number one fear many of us have is losing relevance, right? Becoming irrelevant. And y- you were probably feeling that, and then you quickly recalibrated and realized, no, I have a higher relevance, and it's not going to manifest itself the way it was before I took my leave. My role here is evolved into something different now, and it doesn't mean
Yeah.
I'm less relevant. It just means I'm
Yeah.
relevant in a bigger way on a higher plane. Um,
Yeah.
and as I'm saying these words, I'm hoping that they're boring themselves into my brain because I think it's something every entrepreneur needs to think about and internalize to some degree, especially if you ever really want freedom in any way
Yeah.
in your business,
Yeah.
whether that means changing your role or whether that means stepping away. Um, well, this
And
is great.
Sharon, you
Yeah.
you and your team and people like Drew, y'all were the guardrails for my leadership team. So even though I was away, I knew that I had built external partnerships, and I would encourage people to consider that, where they had people they could call if they got into a crossroads where they just needed that reinforcement or a different perspective that they knew thought enough like me and had enough experience to bring value. And so I would encourage people, if they don't feel like their leadership team is fully ready, it's a great time to consider beefing up some of those external partnerships.
That's great. That's a great advice, piece of advice, and it's a great segue too because I wanted to talk about mindset because I think that's such a huge part of it. But let's talk about some of the tactical things you actually did to get ready. Um, what are some of the low hanging fruit opportunities or steps that you would advise another agency owner to start putting in place and implementing in advance of stepping out and away from the business? And also, how long in advance do you feel like you need to get your running start to do these things?
I would say it took us 3 months to really build framework. We were fortunate enough through other agencies, best practices. We had learned about a framework called RACI, where every piece of our firm is clearly outlined on a spreadsheet. Who is responsible? who is held accountable, who needs to be consulted, and who needs to be informed about decisions
Mhm.
that, everything from our bank statements to how we handle AI to if we get a new contract, who's responsible for that, right?
Mhm.
Um, so the easiest place we started, Sharon, was looking at a spreadsheet like that. And I think every version has this. It may be called something else, but starting with where is the owner's name, the person taking leave. And a process like this also works when anyone on your team is taking considerable time off. And we went through and decided who needs that experience based on where they need to level up or where they naturally have gifts. So we wanted kind of my second in command to really get the feeling of running an agency to give her um, runway to determine if she wants to be a potential owner one day. So it was really important to me to give her those experiences. Um, and then the others we kind of match based on other strengths. So that was a really clear thing we did. Second, we let all of our external partners in on this process and
Mhm.
talk to them about where we would like them to serve as a guardrail. And so our leadership team had really uh, clear cadence of calls set up with partners just to check in. And again, for them, it was a confidence boost of being able to rehash. Here are some things that have happened over the past week. Here's how we handled them. Getting that reinforcement, that additional clarity, and
Mhm.
if they have something big ahead, they can help them think through that. So those external guardrails were great too. And then the third thing we did that I would highly recommend is it sounds silly, but the team was so much more bought in, Sharon, when we talked about how we want you to want our jobs one day so that we have to start getting vulnerable and better living out the values that we're setting for the firm so that you want to stay here long term. You want to grow into a leadership role here. And I think by us being honest with the team, it made them more bought in and not like, well, great, Louise is out, sipping pina coladas for 3 months and we're doing all the work. That doesn't seem fair. They were bought in on this is going to make this a better place to work. And no matter what planning you do, you have to realize this. We as PR agencies, marketing agencies, we cannot outplan life happening. We
Right.
thought we had thought through everything, Sharon. We were like, great job. There's nothing getting through this, contingency plan. And the one thing we didn't think of was actually very obvious. Our financial manager shattered her wrists the week before I came back. The
Oh,
only two people that know how to access the financial side of our firm outside of our accounting firm is the financial manager and me. So, you can plan for everything, but you know what it taught us? Again, an example of like something that went wrong, terribly wrong.
mhm.
She's fine now, of course, but it showed us we can't have an agency built on one or two people only know how to do, something so essential to running our business. So it
Mhm.
made us rethink our invoicing processing, how we can develop financial systems that weren't as people dependent on institutional knowledge.
Mhm.
And so, although I hate that happened to her, it was an opportunity for us to realize that this is an area we have to improve as a firm if we're ever going to allow the firm to grow and still allow people to take meaningful time off.
Awesome. Well, so that's a great segue too. You keep doing this for me, Louise. Thank you. You're an awesome interviewee. What? So what I wanted to know was, and you've just given us one example, but are there things you would have added to your checklist or maybe done differently than you did to get your team ready, um, for you to be absent from the business is my first question. And then my second question is really a follow-up to something you said about this whole conversation around we want you to want our jobs. Were those one-on-one conversations, or was that just a theme that you stitched through team meetings and communications and things like that?
Great questions. So the first one, like things we may would have done differently. Um, I I think for a lot of people, the 3 months completely disconnected, that's pretty extreme, right? Like I didn't even check a Slack. So if I could have done it differently, you want to give yourself enough time to allow your team to not just push things off till you're back, right? So this isn't like a 3 week thing where they're not even really wearing those hats and leveling up. But I probably would have done more of like a 6 week trial, a 4 week trial, um, that also wasn't dependent around the birth of a child. So I think my advice is, start small, but long enough to give your team room to grow.
Mhm,
And I think something that I possibly regret in how I positioned it was like, let's get through the thing versus coming back, Sharon, I realized like this is something I should do every year.
mhm,
I can give you 100 reasons right now why I should not do it this year, right? Like eat my words. But
right.
I think it's really important that people see this as not like we survived the storm,
Yeah.
but this is now integrated into our culture. And I think what's harder for me is imagining doing this every year and consistently like walking the talk. Um, but I know how much it leveled us up. So it's like I can't unsee what I've seen and I have to do it.
Yeah.
So my advice would be pick a time that doesn't feel overly dramatic and don't make it the thing, but make it more of this is our new way of looking at how we level up the firm. It's taking time off as owners to step away to allow y'all to step up, and it will be done on a consistent basis because we want the firm to continue to grow with us and leave a legacy. And to your next question, um, remind me it was about
It was about did you message this one-on-one with team
mm,
members, or did you
that's
message
right.
it consistently as a group, or how did you sort of talk about this and get them prepared, from a communication standpoint? Because I think that's another thing that an agency owner might struggle with is what do I say? When do I say it? And to whom
Yeah.
do I say it?
So I started with our top leadership team and floated it by them. And I would say that was more of a very vulnerable conversation where they probably saw a different side of me of like, look, I really believe this agency can outlive its founders, but we have to do this in order to really shape it for the future and not make it dependent on one talent. And so they were able, I think, to ask all of their, and I think Ellen talked about this on your podcast, like, how does this impact me? How does this impact the team? And of course, I wanted them to know how they would be compensated through it and feel incentivized beyond just the mission alignment. For the team, it was really important to me that as a leadership team, we made this announcement and we looked like a united front and we made it to the entire team together where um, they were able to talk to their supervisors afterwards, and that I knew back channeling wasn't happening with, we sat down with one person, they're, telling their best friend.
Right.
And that worked really well because it ensured that everyone was singing from the same song sheet. We were a united front, and that we almost did a little bit of pre-planning before that announcement, back to that with them, what's in it for me, where we could already answer questions
Mhm.
about what we were doing, how this impacted them, how, they were going to be impacted as minimally as possible. Um, and I think that momentum of like, we're 2 steps ahead helped alleviate fears and ensure that they could trust that this was best for the firm.
Yep. Yep. Wow. Well, I think that is an awesome place to drop the mic because we've walked through mindset, we've walked through preparedness from a tactical perspective, and we've walked through messaging. And what just strikes me is this has been a complete roadmap through the discomfort that any of us would feel making this decision to step away. Not only the why, but the what and the when and how. And so I'm so grateful to you for laying this out for your peers, Louise, because that takes vulnerability too. And it's not easy to get on here and say, this is what I did, and this is how I did it, and this is how it worked out really well. And these are some things maybe that, we didn't think about or could have gone a little bit better. Because we can all learn from each other's experiences and we're all going to have our own experiences to teach from. So, Louise Oliver from Peritus PR, I want to thank you so much for spending time on the podcast and sharing your story. And I would love it if you would mention how people can find out more about the agency and also about how to get in touch with you if they've got questions.
Yes, thank you, Sharon. You're such an inspiration to me, and look forward to continuing to listen and learn from others. Our firm, Peritus PR, can be found, of course, online. I'm also active on LinkedIn, Louise Oliver with Peritus PR, and encourage anyone that's considering doing this. I've talked to a lot of agency owners across the country that have that whisper getting louder and just want a thought partner to discuss it with. So always available to do that and pay it forward to the next firm owner.
Amazing. Thank you. I'm grateful for you. I'm grateful for the conversation. And to everybody
Same.
listening, thank you for joining us today. And as always, for being listeners of the podcast. It's hard to believe that we've been doing this as we're recording this, Louise, you don't even know this, but we are about to drop our 300th episode. And so I
Incredible.
yeah, well, thank you. But I think it's pretty incredible too. Not because I'm patting myself on the back, because when I think about all the tremendous conversations that I've been privileged to
Mm.
be able to have, and by the time this airs, that will be old news, but it's still fresh in my mind, and it's conversations like these that make it so valuable to me to keep um, asking people to spend time with me. So thank you for joining me today. I really appreciate it.
It's an honor, and cheers to the next 300.
Cheers to the next 300. Awesome. All
We're
right, everybody.
cheersing.
Thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you on the next episode. And until then, everybody, please stay well.